Hi, I'm Stuart. Welcome to my YouTube channel. If this is your first time viewing one of my videos, welcome back if you've viewed any of my previous videos. In both cases, I'm glad you're here. This video I'm going to give my reading wrap up for the week of November 10th through November 16th. I completed 2 books this week, so I'm going to give reviews of those books. I read parts of 4 other books, so I'm going to talk briefly about those books. I'm going to show and talk briefly about a Wobble I completed, and show and talk briefly about a Wobble I'm working on currently, and probably a few other updates in my life too. The first book I completed this week is The Vampire of El Norte by Isabel Canas. For most of this book I was uncertain when it was set because unfortunately I don't really know Mexican history, and even though this book is set in a period where there's not actually an open war, but there's battles between U.S. soldiers and Mexicans. But I did learn at the end of the book it's set in 1846. This book stars 2 people, man and woman. The woman is Nina. She is a healer on her family's ranch. Her father and mother want to marry her off to another powerful rancher to kind of cement an alliance. But she wants to prove to them, mainly to her father, that she deserves to stay on the ranch and that her value as a healer makes that a good thing to do. Nestor is a childhood friend of Nina. They were really close as children. He was a child of a vaquero, which I think is a cowboy, a ranch worker. As such, he's not considered really worthy of Nina, although they were childhood friends. What happened is they were out, actually, I think they were trying to search for gold because they thought there might be some gold from Spanish explorers. What happened though is Nina got attacked by a strange creature, and their memories are hazy of it. They're the kids then. But Nestor thought Nina died, and so he ran away from the ranch. So he was away for like 9 years. As the Mexican army was recruiting from the ranchers soldiers, and Nestor learned of this, and he came back to the ranch and he discovered Nina was alive. And there was a lot of difficulty between them though, because Nina thought Nestor deserted her, but Nestor didn't know that Nina was alive. And the story goes from there. It's part historical, it's part romance, it's part horror, it's part talking about kind of the roles of women of that time where the parents could marry them off. They didn't quite have the power, I think, that royals had in Europe when they would marry off their daughters, but Nina could refuse, but there's a lot of pressure put on her. So it's all those things mixed into one. It's quite an enjoyable read on all those levels. There are a lot of thrilling parts, some parts that kind of make someone like myself kind of angry at the mores of the times. This book is written by a modern author, but it's similar to a classic novel because the author has to write about the mores of the times, which is 1846, as I said earlier. There is some pretty brutal scenes there that might be off-putting to people. There is the sexism and misogyny of that time, which might be off-putting also to people. But I quite enjoyed the book. I recommend it to someone who wants to read a romance, horror, historical novel set in 1846 Mexico, just as long as you consider the concerns I mentioned, if those wouldn't be too much of an issue for you. Haven't actually rated this on Storygraph yet, but it's probably going to be somewhere between a a 4 and a 4.5, somewhere along there. Not quite a 5, but quite an enjoyable book. I should say, too, that both Nina and Nestor are quite appealing characters. They have their flaws, and there's a lot of things they got to work through with each other, but they're both quite appealing characters, as are some of the supporting cast. Not all of them. Some are kind of irritating, but Nina and Nestor are quite appealing characters. The second book I completed is The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian by Sherman Alexie. This was the November book pick for the I'm with the Band book club, moderated by MJ, which is a book club on Fable. And MJ is on here, Reading This Life at M-J. This book tells the story of Junior, real name Arnold, who was born and raised on the Spokane Indian Reservation. And he was born with, I believe that the term is hydrocephalus. He had water in the brain, and he had other health conditions too. It was kind of touch and go early in his life, and partly because of that, his head is funny. He gets bullied a lot on the reservation, but he has one friend, Rowdy, who's a really tough kid, but he does stick up for Junior. Sometimes he actually beats on Junior too, but he defends Junior. At age 14, Junior has a talk. He gets angry with the teacher, throws a book at the teacher, hits the teacher. Teacher has a talk with him, and he suggests that Junior may want to look into going into a school off the reservation, a white school. And Junior does decide to do this. The school is like adjacent to the reservation, but not super close. It's like 22 miles each way. And there's big problems for him acclimating to the school. Actually, at the school they call him Arnold, so I guess I'll call him Arnold for the rest of this review, but because Arnold is his given name. There is real problems acclimating, but he does get some friends, and the story goes from there. It's talks a lot about what it's like growing up on a reservation, the problems that plague Indian reservations, and what happens when someone tries to go out into the white world, go into a white school. The other people of the reservation viewed that as a violation, I guess. And he got beat on even more because of that for a while. There is, of course, racism. There is some, as Arnold's a teen boy, they do talk about the things he's thinking about. I don't quite know how to say it. He does talk about think about things like sex, and he's attracted to girls and stuff like that. Some of that talk, I think possibly people may be disturbed by, because it's talk of a 14-year-old boy. It's not abnormal, but I think some people may be disturbed with it. Some severe bullying, as I said, that's something people may be concerned about. There's the racism. There is, one of the characters has bulimia. So those issues might be a problem. I will say that the book is written in a way that makes, at least me as a reader, want to keep reading, even though it's difficult topics. I think it's because the author uses some humor. He sees kind of the absurd side of things that makes it such that I want to keep reading. But it's both a quite disturbing book and a very, a book that, I really didn't want to put down. In the back of the book, the edition I read was a 10th anniversary edition, and in the back of the book, it's revealed that the character of Arnold was very much based upon Sherman Alexie's life, but it wasn't a 100% based upon it. The other characters were based upon real characters, but they weren't. There might have been in some cases an amalgamation of multiple characters into one. But it was based upon his time growing up and what he went through and what he accomplished and stuff like that. So I recommend this book to anyone who wants to read a YA novel about basically true life experiences of a boy who grew up on a reservation and decided to go to a white school and what all that entails. Just as long as you take into mind the concerns I mentioned. If there are issues for you, you may not want to read the book. I haven't read this book yet, either in Storygraph, just as I hadn't read the first book I talked about. This book's probably going to be 4.5 to 5, probably in that range. It's quite a good book. Now I'm going to talk about the 4 books I read part of this week, but didn't complete. The first is All Hallows by Christopher Golden. I'm listening to the audiobook. I'm about 30% through. This is quite a good book. I'm really enjoying it. It's told from multiple POVs. I'm not quite sure the time frame. I'm guessing the 80s because people don't have cell phones. It's set in a Massachusetts town. I can't remember the name or whether it's actually a real town, whether I looked it up, but it's just in a neighborhood in this town, and in addition to the horror elements, there's a lot of stuff going on underneath between people, their relationship issues between couples who are having marital problems, things going on with their kids, and a lot going on there underneath, and it's quite good, but there is multiple POVs. We'll say this is the first audiobook I read that is read by more than one narrator. There's a man and a woman. They don't read the same chapter together. If it's a man or a boy, the man reads the character and does the women's and girls' voices. And the woman, when it's a woman or girl, she does that chapter and does the men and boys' voices. They both do a really great job, and although I don't have a lot of experience, one previous book I read that had kids and teens, I didn't think the narrator did a good job, but I think these 2 narrators do a good job. It can be really tough if you're a narrator and you're doing women and girls and men and boys in one chapter. And I think these narrators do a really good job. It is possible that I might have to return this to Hoopla, though. I'm really enjoying it, but I kind of overextended myself this month, and some stuff came through on Libby, and I probably should have postponed it, but I am quite enjoying it. If worse comes to worse, I'll use one of my credits on Libro FM to get it, because I don't know if Hoopla lets a person borrow it twice, because they charge $5 each time you borrow it. I would feel bad about doing that anyway, because I should be able to do it in 21 days, but I am quite enjoying the book. The second book I read some of this week is The Complete Tales of H.P. Lovecraft by H.P. Lovecraft. And I am enjoying it. I'm just kind of reading this when I feel like it. It hasn't quite got to the stories that I really love about Lovecraft, because many of these stories I'm reading for the 4th time. So far it's not quite at that level, but hopefully it gets there, and I feel the same way as I used to. I'm not quite feeling that way now, but hopefully I will. It's hard to describe a book of short stories because it's spoiler, but still an enjoyable read if I'm perhaps a little disappointed I'm not feeling like I used to about his stories. The third book I read part of this week is The Bookshop, A History of the American Bookstore by Evan Friss. This is a book that I'm reading as part of Tia's Book Club, moderated by Tia Chu, at Tia Chu on YouTube. And this is the November pick. I'm quite enjoying it. Some of the chapters, it's like there's so many details, it gets maybe slightly tedious, but it's quite interesting. They go back to Benjamin Franklin, and I have to admit it probably doesn't speak too well of me, but I didn't know Benjamin Franklin was involved in book selling, book publishing. I just think of him as involved with the the Continental Congress, the Declaration of Independence, Constitution, that stuff, and the trying to flying a kite, trying to get it hit by lightning to go down the line to a key. But it starts there and it goes forward in time, and it's quite interesting the how book selling progressed. And where I currently am is in the early 20th century. Actually, I guess I'm actually toward the latter part of the 20th century. What's kind of interesting is one of the chapters, which was a short one, is the bookstore they talked about is R.J. Julia, which is in Madison, Connecticut, and I'm a Connecticut resident. I have not been to that bookstore, but it is a quite noted independent bookstore, and I've often thought I should go to it. There's a second one too in Middletown, which wasn't mentioned in the book, which is closer to me. But it's a good book. It's just a lot of facts. It's just interesting how there's a lot of characters too over the years involved in these bookstores. So that makes it interesting too. The fourth book I read part of this week is The Night Parade by Ronald Malfi. I just started it this week. This is the November book club pick for Fright Club, which is a YouTube book club. Created and moderated by Cliff at Cliff's Dark Gems and Crits at Crits_reads. As the book starts, there's a man and his daughter, and it's obvious they're trying to escape from something. As the story unfolds, I'm not too far in, but as it unfolds, that it goes back in time, and it's clear that something occurred. There was some kind of event, and strange things start happening. People start behaving strangely, and something happened to the wife of the main character and the mother of the daughter. It's not clear yet. The main character is actually lying to the daughter, because the daughter, she's like 8 going on 9, but she's very perceptive. She knows something is wrong, but it's kind of interesting. I think it's sort of like it's a horror novel, but it's almost reading sort of like kind of like a dystopian novel where something's going to go really bad with civilization. So we'll have to see. But it's quite interesting. I did join another Fable book club. It's Booked and Busy, moderated by Jamie, at Jamie Fock on YouTube. I'm probably not going to get to read their November read, which is The Will of the Many by James Islington. But I've heard a lot of good things about that book, so hopefully I'll read it sometime. Maybe I can start it before the end of the month, even if I can't complete it in the time frame that the book club is supposed to complete it in. Now I just want to talk a little bit about something that might be considered a little political by some people, and I know people don't always want political stuff in their book videos. So what I'm going to do is I'll put some text in the bottom of the screen and I'll say that is political discussion or something of that nature. So if you want to avoid that, you can skip ahead. After the most recent election, I'm a little concerned that I've been concerned with book banning for a while. I haven't actively done anything about it, but I've been concerned, and after the recent election, I thought that it was going to get worse starting next year, but in fact it's already gotten worse in some states like Florida and I think maybe Tennessee, Oklahoma. Some states it's already gotten worse. Those states are putting lots of books on their ban list, so I became concerned and wanted to do something about it, realizing that I'm only just one person. There's a lot of big forces that are very powerful, and I can't expect to fight them, but I can at least do my little part. So I did a couple of things. One of the things I did is I bought a reader membership in PEN America. I'll just give what looks like the mission statement from PEN America, and it says the freedom to write. PEN America stands at the intersection of literature and human rights to protect free expression in the United States and worldwide. We champion the freedom to write, recognizing the power of the word to transform the world. Didn't actually realize until I read that it was more than just the U.S. But that is their focus. The second organization I didn't join, I contributed to, and that is the American Library Association. unlike Pen America, there is a wide range of things that it appears the American Library Association does to support librarians and help them advance their careers. But part of what they do is also to fight book banning. I did look into possibly becoming a member there, but it looked like even though you could become a member if you didn't actually work in a library, it did seem like you had to be actively campaigning for the issues that you would join in. There's a bunch of categories you can join. So I will look at it again, but I think that with that one I'll probably just make a contribution every so often. Part of what I hope to do with each of those organizations is just become more informed about what's going on. There's a lot of booktubers who talk about book banning, but it's obvious that I need to be more informed. And one of the things I did is I looked through the books I read this year and see how many books I read that are banned books list or attempted to be banned. And it's actually quite anemic. I'm actually counting this twice. I read The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo, both the physical book and the audiobook. I did listen to the audiobook while reading the physical book, so I did read both of them. Best as I can tell, this particular book, this surprises me, this book is on a ban list. It was actually just one place in, I believe, North Carolina banned it. But the other books that I've read that are banned books are Oryx and Crake by Margaret Atwood, On Writing a Memoir of the Craft by Stephen King, A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas, Normal People by Sally Rooney, and The Absolute True Diary of a Part-Time Indian by Sherman Alexie. And actually, I have to admit that 3 of these books are part of the I'm with a Banned book club, so I wouldn't have probably read them otherwise. There is another challenge that is one created by Reading This Life at M-J. That is, for this year, it was 24 banned books in 24. I'm not sure if that's the exact title, but the concept is that people read 24 banned books people read 24 banned books in 2024. And it is an impressive concept, but I have to admit that there's no way I could commit to something like that. I'm sure it'll be 25 and 25 for next year. But if I do read the 12 books in the I'm with the Banned book club, and it still seems to be going strong, so hopefully it continues all through next year. And some of the books that I have that are I'm part of the Read What You Own challenge, some of them I know are banned books too. So I might end, if I get those 12 and if I get like maybe 5 to 10 other books, I could hit between 15 and 20, but I'm not going to commit to 25. That's just too much for me to do. It's too much of a commitment to one challenge, even if I think it is a good cause. Next, I'm just going to talk about a Wobble I completed and what I'm working on. The Wobble I completed is Pierre the Penguin, and Pierre is the 5th large Wobble in the Halloween set that I've been working on. I think Pierre came out pretty well. I don't really know how Pierre is considered a Halloween Wobble, but I did think Pierre came out pretty well. And after this, there's like 8 small Wobbles to work on. The first small Wobble I started working on is the Tiny Pumpkin, and this is what it's supposed to look like when I'm done. And I'm mostly done, actually. This is the body. I just have to put a couple things on top, a stem, and I guess it's some leaves, and then I'll be done. Besides that, I walked a couple times at the mall. I walked once outside. Weather continues to be nice here, except we have a serious lack of rain, which concerns me because we have a well. And pretty soon the ground will freeze and water's not going to be able to seep in. But there's nothing I can do about that, so I might as well take advantage of it by going for a walk. Other than that, I do love the lead up to Christmas, and people will be putting up their decorations more and more. I watched a women's college basketball game or two. The main team I watch is the UConn women's basketball team in college basketball. Sometimes the men's team too, and sometimes other teams. But watched that. Watched a wrestling show. A friend of mine traveled to Seattle to attend some wrestling shows, and one of them was broadcast on Thriller TV, so I watched that one, which is kind of cool. I think I spotted him, but wasn't totally sure. I'd be interested in hearing how your reading week went, what books you're reading, whether you enjoyed them or not, other events in your life. If you'd like to talk about them, please do so in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, please subscribe, please hit the bell to get notified when I upload future videos. I hope you have a wonderful reading week, and I hope you have a wonderful week in general.